All right, we're going to do our first little program here, and as typical in coding, the first one that we usually do with Arduinos is a blink, which is going to basically make a LED turn on and off, and we're going to talk about two different ways to do that. But first I'm going to do a quick little wiring, and you may or may not already know the color of the wires really doesn't matter. Usually you use ground as black and you use a power cable as a color or positive for red. It doesn't really matter when you're wiring these up, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come off of a ground wire. By the way, there's 3 grounds on this DuinoKit coming off the ESP32 chip. I'm going to go into a ground pin, which I believe is that one, and I'm going to go over to an LED minus, which is the ground, and you notice they're labeled above the LED. There's little plus and minus signs. The ground is always minus, the GND, and the positive will usually be coming off of your power pin off of your Arduino, and I hooked this up to pin 13. You could hook it up to any digital pin, and we're going to talk about that in the code a little bit. The reason I chose 13 is most of the Arduino boards have a built-in LED on pin 13, and they always use this in the example. This ESP32 chip does not have a built-in LED. However, we're just going to use the same pin arrangement. And let's take a look at our code real quick. Actually, let me go over to the Tinkercode site. And this is project 11 blinking LED. And this tells you a whole bunch of stuff about LEDs. It stands for light emitting diode, and there's a plus and a minus to it. So that's the polarity. It also talks about current limiting resistors and ways to hook them up. The DuinoKit has current limiting resistors built into it, and that comes in right in here. They're actually labeled. I have a little schematic drawing diagram up here of the LED, and it's got that little squiggly line, which is your resistor, and they're actually really small chips mounted into the board. The reason we did that is so you don't burn out the LEDs. If you put too much voltage to them, the LEDs will burn out. We want them to last longer, and they have different values for different LEDs. So we just built them into the circuit board, but it's also talked about and discussed in the documentation. So let me pull up this code real quick from the Tinkercode site, and here is my wiring. I actually went for the ground cable over here. There is another ground over here, and there's another ground up here. Any one of them will work. They're universal. They're all hooked together on the board, but I pulled off this ground wire and IO13 and hooked that up to the positive side of the LED. And I've actually got 2 different types of code in here, and although they work exactly the same, there is a slight difference in how they operate, and we want to talk about that. So when I go in this code window, what I'm going to do is go up here to the copy to clipboard and click that button, and then I'm going to open up my Arduino software, my Arduino IDE app, or if you're doing it online, whichever method you're using. Should pull that up on the screen here. Should pop up. And I'm just going to paste my code into this once it is operational. This software seems to take a long time to boot up for some reason, but what I'm going to do, this is pulling up an old program that I was using, working with. I'm going to go and do a new sketch, and that will open up a new window. And then I'm going to close this one out. That way I know what I'm working with. Depending upon the version of the software you're using, you might have to select your board, which we previously set up. For some reason, not memorizing that.